Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk about the latest episode of Stargirl. Before I do, I want to remind everyone about my Teespring store. If you go there, you can get t-shirts with the channel logo on it and other designs, and anything that you buy there, of course, helps support the channel. I'd also like to ask everyone to please give the video a like, because that really helps as well. Subscribe if you can, and leave a comment. I love getting comments from you guys, and I like engaging in conversations with everyone, so please do that as well. Okay, let's get into the episode. It was called Infinity Incorporated Part 1. As it starts out, we get a flashback to 6 months prior to the most recent events we'd seen on the show, when Jenny got the lantern ring, which was itself an episode a while back. And it turns out that at the same time, her missing brother celebrated his 18th birthday, because they're twins. It was her 18th birthday, and his as well. And he was celebrating it with a friend who gave him a bus ticket. And it turns out that when she first activated the ring at that moment, it apparently affected him simultaneously, which we didn't know at the time. Because he was celebrating his birthday in a building he wasn't supposed to be in, the cops showed up and he got taken off to Mr. Bones, who we saw at the end of season 2 and we're now finally seeing in season 3, because he had paid the cops to find the brother, whose name is Todd. Apparently, Mr. Bones knows that Todd's father was the Green Lantern. Next, we're back in the present, and we see Courtney and her family having a very stilted and sort of staged dinner, apparently because now they know they're being watched. And as this is occurring, Beth is trying to disable the cameras. It also turns out that Yolanda's been telling her mother she was working late all the time when she was out doing JSA stuff. And her mother figures out that she wasn't actually working. We go back to Beth and we see that she shuts down the power all over town so that Courtney and her family can find and disable the cameras in the house, while the rest of the team looks for cameras elsewhere, because they're everywhere. They're at the garage, they're in the school, the diner. So they're going around looking for these cameras while the cameras are disabled without power. Beth theorizes that the gambler was killed because he stumbled upon the camera network, but that's not actually what happened. He was given access to it. He didn't just stumble upon it. We then see that Courtney and Pat have a conversation about how she's worried that not only is she out of the JSA, but that her friends aren't her friends anymore. Pat tries to reassure her that that's not the case, but she's still kind of down about it. But then in the next moment, Shade shows up out of the blue and kind of kidnaps Courtney, saying that he needs her help. And Pat follows them into the ether and wherever Shade was taking Courtney. While Yolanda is searching her own house for cameras, her mother confronts her about what she's been up to and says, if you can't tell me, then you can't stay here. We then see that Shade was taking Courtney to see Jenny, who apparently is the only one who can help him get his powers back under control, because he was having problems controlling them. But it seems like she's sort of refusing to do so. She tells Courtney that she's finally found her brother and that he needs their help. And we then see that she wasn't kidding, as he is apparently being experimented on by Mr. Bones at the Helix Institute, or at the very least, tied down and experiencing some sort of weird bodily, like electrical charges. There's more talk about the issues that Shade is having, and apparently his powers and Jenny's are intertwined and have been ever since Jenny's ring zapped some shadow residue back at the school during the fight with Eclipso, and it invaded the ring at that time. And this means that Jenny has to exercise the shadow material from the ring, because otherwise her and Shade's powers are going to be intertwined permanently. And every time she uses the ring, he ends up being hurt by it and he can't really use them correctly. It's kind of a weird thing. I didn't really understand it, but that's what's going on. So Courtney theorizes that rescuing Todd might be what allows Jenny to focus herself enough to separate the Shade energy from the ring energy, or the shadow energy from the ring energy. Over at the school, we see that Beth and Hourman have found all of the cameras, and just as they're about to disable the last one, the power comes back on, At which point, our man tells whoever's watching that they're coming to get him just before punching the camera out. Jenny then uses the ring to manipulate a maglock on a door so that they can get to her brother. And when she does, it causes Shade some pain. But then they find Todd on a table in some distress, as I was saying, and that he can't be moved from the slab he's on without, in his words, destroying the world. Something then goes wonky as Jenny is like touching him or touching the table or focusing on him, and both her and Todd's eyes light up green, but then his turn black, and a bunch of green energy, which I'm assuming is will energy from the ring, like explodes, knocking everyone to the floor and turning Todd into like a shadow creature and zapping Shade and Pat into the Shadowlands. And that's where the episode ends. They sort of come to in the Shadowlands, which are black and white, and they almost get run over by a car. And that's where next week's episode is going to start, going by the promo that ran right after the episode. So I didn't think too much of this episode. I always like seeing Shade. I think he's very cool, and the actor does an excellent job in the part. So I enjoyed his presence, and I was glad to see Jenny again because, you know, I'm a fan of Green Lantern, and I was kind of bummed when we last saw her that she was only there very briefly and we didn't get to see her become Green Lantern. And so I was glad to see her back, and I'm hoping they continue to have her on. But neither of those two things were really enough to make me, like this episode very much. We only got to see Beth and our man in costume briefly. So we didn't get to see Wildcat. We saw her last episode, but and the one before, but very briefly. We didn't get to see Courtney in costume, which is like the whole reason for watching the show. You want to see Stargirl in action. But no, there was no Stargirl. And for that matter, we didn't even see Starman. He's only in the episode as a voiceover when he's talking to the gang as they're looking for the cameras. So, and when Beth's trying to shut the power off. So yeah, I didn't think much of this episode. It didn't really accomplish anything. It was also good that we finally saw Mr. Bones again, but even that was briefly. He was in it for like 10 seconds. So not the best episode they've ever done. Hopefully next episode we'll get to see Courtney be Stargirl. And I know they're kind of do this thing with her where, she's doubting herself and she doesn't think she could be Stargirl, which means she's not going to be Stargirl for a couple of episodes. But I'm hoping that this episode and last episode were the two where she's not going to be Stargirl. And then we're going to see her be Stargirl again, because really that's like the whole point of the show. And, hopefully we'll get to see the other three JSA members in their costumes as well. There was one sort of plot of this episode that I left out, and it basically involved Mike and his friend and Zeke hanging out at the garage while, the power was out and looking for cameras and all that. But it didn't really, there was nothing there. There was no substance to it. There's one moment where the kid wishes for all the cameras that the evil person is using to watch them or that they ever touched. So a bunch of still photograph cameras show up and they're kind of sorting through them, but it didn't add anything to the episode. This episode was kind of just blah. I didn't think anything of it. I mean, I'm curious to see what's going on with the kid Todd. Why is a shadow creature? What's happening there? But it seems like this episode was kind of like a placeholder or filler between the events of the previous episode and the events of next episode. Seems like we might get more next episode. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Oh, and Cindy wasn't in this episode. There was no Cindy. So I like Cindy, and I wish we had seen Cindy, and they just completely left her out. So I didn't like that. But that's really it. So I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with a review of the next episode. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.